I'm happy to be here. I'm happy for the informal nature of your meeting. I've enjoyed so far. It's so great to hear people laughing and teasing, all the while still making things happen for the community, and that just goes to show you that it can be done. I'm also so impressed by the vitality of this organization, that you're inducting new members. We all know how busy everyone is, and it's really a testament to the work that you do and the way that you conduct your meetings that you're having new members join. I know I'm a member of the Alton Optimist, and I know well enough that it's difficult to find new members and people committed to the community that have the time and the inclination to make a commitment to your organization. So congratulations on that. We had kind of a laugh ahead of time because I know in speaking with other organizations, sometimes there's a danger of a speaker running over or going too long, especially if that speaker is a little bit passionate about the topic. So we have a couple of signals in the room to let me know when to lay off or cut it, and I will certainly watch for those. But I appreciate your time today, and I think as a guest here, I'd like to say that when I talk about this program, it may leave you with a couple of different opportunities. So you might see it as an opportunity to get involved in the existing Reach Out and Read program in the Alton School District. You might see it as an opportunity to just, maybe it'll plant a seed or create a spark for something that you may want to do in a different school district, perhaps East Alton, or in just one school. And it may just be that you'll hear about this program and you'll think of it as another thing that's going on in the community that's very positive and really exemplifies the type of people that we live with in our community, the type of just the dedication and the sincerity to make things better for everyone in the community, just like yourselves. And happily, this is connected to Rotary because this program was actually, the spark for this program came from one of your fellow Rotarians in the Alton Godfrey chapter. So, as Dave said, I've been in the Alton School District for 22 years, and the job that I do now for the past 5 years is I work with teachers to help teachers be reading teachers, because what we know is reading is honestly the most important subject. It is, and it does make information accessible in all subject areas. And we know that all of our teachers are reading teachers. So sometimes people get their certification in other areas, but when they come to the classroom and begin working with kids, they realize that we really all need to know how to help kids become better readers. So, what happened in Alton, and it happened just from somebody hearing about literacy rates. So Steve Thompson, I don't know if you know Steve, but at the time he worked for CNB Bank, and now he works for Carrollton Bank. But Steve approached the school district not this past summer, but the summer before, and he had read an article about third grade literacy rates. And it's interesting that you just had speakers talking about literacy rates, because what we do know, what the research tells us, is that if a child can read at grade level by third grade, they are far more likely to graduate, far more likely to go to college, and if they can't read at grade level by third grade, they're much more likely to drop out of school, and actually there's research that shows that there's a fair chance that they could end up in prison. You can read articles about that. The numbers usually fluctuate, but there's definitely a correlation. So Steve read the article and called the district, and he said, hey, what percentage of kids in Alton are reading at grade level at third grade? And whatever that number is, what can we do to make it better? How can we raise that percentage? And so the people in the school district put Steve and myself and another literacy person together and allowed us to put our heads together. And we started to come up with some really key design principles on how to do this. And we had a lot of discussion about, well, one thing that we know about people getting better at doing something, the only way to get better at doing something is to do it. Okay? So you can watch a basketball game all day long, but when I hit the court, I'm not going to be any better at playing basketball just by watching. Well, sometimes when kids are having trouble learning to read, those are the kids who get the least opportunity to read, to actually do it. So we wanted to make sure that this was, whatever we did, kids were going to be reading. They were going to be doing the reading. not listening to someone else read. The other thing we know is that if I want to get better at doing something, I can't get on the court with the Chicago Bulls and expect to get better. I have to find a good fit for me with regards to my practice of doing something. So we wanted to make sure, we know in Alton, we do an assessment and we can tell at what level, reading level, a student is independent. And we wanted to make sure that whatever extra practice they're doing was just a little bit harder than what they could do easily, so that they could make some improvements. So that was another principle. We pulled some community members together, just a handful of people, and we said, okay, how is this going to fit with the community? Well, we knew that we had to have an opportunity to get the kids. And one thing you'll find about teachers is they're not really inclined to want their school day to be interrupted. They only get six and a half hours with the kids, and it's not, they're just not comfortable with saying these kids are going to go out and read with a volunteer and miss core instruction, and we know that's not good for kids either. But what we do know is that our kids have an arrival window of 45 minutes. Kids can enter the building at 7:15, and class doesn't start until 8 o'clock. And so in our work in the buildings, there are so many times that you're looking at these kids sitting waiting for school to start and thinking, what can we be doing with these kids? And teachers are scurrying around getting ready for the school day, and that is their contractual prep time. So we know teachers aren't always available before school to extend the school day, but we knew the kids were there, and that might be an opportunity. We also know when our volunteers came together, they said, is this going to be another program to serve kids who are below grade level or who are just for needy kids? You know, we really think every child should have an opportunity to participate. We want to do something that helps every child. Well, of course, every second grader is learning to read. And I left out the part about why we started with second grade. We're certainly not going to wait for third grade to figure out, oh, you're behind, now let's try to catch up. So we decided, let's get on the offense and go to second grade. The other thing we know about second grade is developmentally kids take at about 8 years old, there's a cognitive shift that takes place. So the range of what's average for kindergarten and first grade readers is very wide. But as they come into 8 years old, their brains make a shift, and we should be seeing some consistency in what they're able to do with their reading. That's when we start, you know, knowing that that's our catch-up time. So everybody participating, reading it just a little bit harder, the kids doing the reading, and can we get people in before school to listen to kids read? So those were the foundational principles. And when we looked at the volunteer base that was in the room, you know, 6 or 7 people saying, you know, Steve said, Elaine, if we get something going, I promise you, there are people in this community that want our students to do well. They'll show up. If we make a program, I'm telling you, the people are there. So we talked to the people in the room, and you know, we have to be careful because, and I may have already done it today, but when you work in education, you kind of give off that teacher vibe, and then people start to think, well, I'm not a teacher and that doesn't fit me. I can't do that because I'm not a teacher. So we made sure that the community members that were at the table kept us from getting too teacher speak or too complicated, kind of keep it simple. So what was the role of the volunteer? That was the decision. What would that person have to do? You know, we know we're going to be talking to very busy people. We know people have a lot of commitments. How can we entice them to come in and give a little bit of time to us? So the volunteers, the program started, we started at one school in Alton. And we decided on the school that had the greatest need based on current number of students reading at grade level. And at the time, last year, that was East Elementary School. And it was also one of our larger schools, so a lot of second grade students on campus. And we designed the program to run Tuesday through Friday from 7:30 to 8 a.m. And what we also know is if you volunteer in the school, some of our volunteer opportunities require a background check and a drug screen, which is important. We want our kids to be safe. But we knew that if we kept a certified staff member supervising this program, then the volunteer process would be much simpler. There would be a very simple volunteer form that would have to be filled out. We wouldn't have any expense, and we would keep the person that's volunteering in a comfortable position, not feeling vulnerable to be alone with the student or to have to go through the trouble of a background check. So the volunteers, when they pick a day of the week, one day of the week, and they say, generally speaking, on Wednesday, I can come in before school and listen to kids read. And that's great. And the key to our volunteer program is if on Wednesday morning you wake up and you can't come, you don't call anyone. You don't get a sub, you don't do anything. Because we set the program up so that it's very flexible. The kids know if 5 people are there that morning, that's how many people are there that morning. You're not meeting one child. What happens is the kids come into the gym and they arrive at different times, and it's not always the same. They have their books that are already in the building. They have their folders that have their reading logs in them. The volunteers are sitting on the stage in tables. The staff member just takes them in order and places, they approach the volunteer, sit down, read to the volunteer. The volunteer listens, helps if they're stuck on a word, gives them a little encouragement, maybe talks to them about what the story is about or something connected to the story, signs their log, and sends them off. That's as simple as it gets. The volunteer doesn't have to walk in with any materials. The volunteer doesn't have to walk out with any responsibilities. The 30 minutes that they give is the 30 minutes that we appreciate, and there's nothing outside of that. We do the rest. So that gives you an idea of what our team is like. When we started at East and we said, you know what, we've never done this before. We don't want to get in over our heads. We're going to start at one building, we're going to start on 4 mornings, and we're going to see what this looks like, and we're going to keep going until we get it right. We're not going to take it out into any other buildings. And we started with maybe 7 people at the original meeting, and of course we started doing some outreach efforts, and some of our community members brought in other community members, and of course we had Steve working at a bank. It kind of became the Bankers Challenge, and we had people from every bank, I think, in the area signing up to come in. And we started listening to kids read. And so the kids know it's a choice. When you show up at school in the morning, we never said, if you're in 2nd grade, you have to go over here and read to someone. We never said it. We said, if you want to practice your reading, these people are here to visit and they would love to listen to you read. And we have kids skipping across the gym to go over there and practice their reading. And the volunteers that came to the table said, well, gosh, if they come and do some extra reading, maybe we should give them a sticker. You know, maybe that'll make them happy. We said, no, this is going to be all intrinsic motivation, and they will come. These children are starved for individual attention. And that doesn't, I'm not saying that they're coming from a home where they don't get individual attention. I'm saying when you're 8, you can never get enough. So that's the truth of the matter. So I'll give you a little bit of an idea about the data from last year. So we started at East in October, and our team quickly grew at East from about 12 to, by the end of the year, at East alone, we had 34 volunteers on average per week. But what happened that we didn't really keep control over is after we'd been going for about 3 months at East, a teacher from another building said, hey, that's cool, and we want that at our school, and well, you can't just keep it at East, we want to do it at our school. And so they started a program at Lovejoy, and the same thing happened at West. So last year, once we were running pretty smoothly, we ended up at 3 schools. I'll give you an idea of the type of volume. So you don't spend, the time that you spend with a student when you're volunteering, it could be anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. And you really, it kind of depends on how many kids are waiting, whether you abbreviate it to some extent. We started at East in October. We started at West and Lovejoy after Christmas. By the end of last year, in that short amount of time, we had over 4,000 reading experiences with kids. Because the team at Lovejoy quickly became 18 volunteers, and the team at West quickly became 25 volunteers. And who are these volunteers? They were from the Rotary, they were from Zonta, they were from the Wild Mustang Sanctuary, they were from family members of students, family members of teachers. And what happened when our teachers saw these volunteers walking into the building in the morning, you know, sometimes as educators, and you read the press about standardized test scores, or what are we doing in the schools, and what's going wrong in the schools, it can feel a little bit isolating as a teacher. You think, gosh, we're just never doing enough, and what kind of success, you know, what about the success that we are having? When people saw the volunteers walk in, our teachers were inspired. They were very inspired by the fact that these community members were giving of their time. And very quickly, we had teachers signing up to be the coordinator in the morning, taking turns to go down and do the organization for the kids. We estimated last year in that program, in those 3 schools, we had 869 volunteer hours, essentially, the half hour adding up. We had really wonderful growth. So I'll give you an idea of the pre and the post. We had at East Elementary, which had the program the longest, from the pre-test to the post-test, we increased the percentage of kids reading at or above grade level by 26%.
Wow.
We had at Lovejoy, it was 14%, and their program ran a little shorter, and West it was 13%. Now, that's not to say that we didn't have good teaching going on at the same time, and that's not to say that we don't have kids seeing the reading specialist if they have a diagnosed reading disability. But it is, what we did find is this. The thing about kids that are a little bit behind is they can get farther and farther behind if we're not careful, because every student has to make growth to stay on track. If you're behind, you have to make catch-up growth. So if an average second grader on track from fall to winter has to make 2 levels of growth and you're already behind, you have to make more than 2 levels of growth. Well, what we found at East, and we watched very carefully at East because that's where we had spent most of our time, we found there were 10 kids who made catch-up growth. And out of those 10, 9 were regular participants before school. And so we knew we were onto something. We knew the extra time was amounting to something. But a lot of the numbers we collected because when we were planning with community members, one thing we know about keeping volunteers engaged, and you see it right here in your organization, people have to know that the time they give is amounting to something. You have to know that there's an impact. Otherwise, your volunteer base will trickle off. So we kept that count just to keep that engagement of our volunteers, and I think that really helped. But so much of what we saw happen with this program was really could not be measured by numbers. You know, we talked about, you know, we would come to a Rotary organization, and one of the, Cora Miller is one of our amazing volunteers, and I want to make sure that she speaks to her experience. But I was speaking to an organization just like yours, very much, it was a Rotary organization. And one of the gentlemen, when we passed out the handout sheets, he said, now listen, I am way too busy to get involved in this, but I think it's awesome. And I'm going to come one time because I want to be able to tell people about it. I want to be able to say, hey, you know, this might be something you'd be interested in. And I want to see it firsthand, so when I talk about it, I know what I'm talking about. So he showed up one morning, and he was there early, and the first little girl that came down to read with him, she had these little round cheeks and these little bitty glasses, and she sat down, and one of our social workers said, you know, it's an amazing thing. Here's 2 people who have never met before, and just with the bridge of a book, within seconds, they're within inches of each other, listening, you know, because you have to lean in to hear the child read. And she said it's just an amazing thing to watch every morning. Well, this little girl started reading, and this gentleman leaned in, and, you know, she was reading and listening and talking, and, you know, there was a couple of laughs, and then after, you know, she finished, she looked at him and she said, are you going to read with me tomorrow? So I pulled up at school the next day at 7:15, who was sitting on the front stoop, but the same gentleman that had said he wouldn't be able to come back. And I went, so fair warning, the children will tell you on the program. And he volunteered once or twice a week for the rest of the year. He just had a blast. And what a lot of our volunteers will say is, we're not sure who's getting more out of this. We're not sure if it's the kids or if it's us. It's a great way to start your day. Our volunteers and kids are seeing each other in the grocery store, and, you know, parents are getting introduced. There's hugs exchanged. We've got children we had one student who had a diagnosed learning disability who was a little reluctant to read, and by the end of the year, his teacher said he had made such exponential growth. And I said, you know what, Isaiah, every time someone reads with you, they say to me, I read with Isaiah today, and he is, you know, such a great kid. And I said, Isaiah, everybody wants to talk about you. And he said, I know. He said, you know, someday maybe I'm going to help kids learn to read. He went from a non-reader to feeling so confident and powerful, to making exponential growth, to actually seeing himself as a person who can contribute to a similar program someday. So it's a game changer. We know it is. If you're interested in any way, actually I see Corey Gallivan, right? Corey's wife is a teacher in the district, and she coordinates. She was a big part of the success of the program at West Elementary, and now she's at Gilson Brown doing the same thing, volunteering her prep time for it.